Rain fell like whispers across the empty field, swallowing the sound of Jason's footsteps as he trudged toward the dim light of the farmhouse. His coat clung to his body, soaked through, and in his arms, the baby screamed. Not in tantrum, but in hunger. He had no plan, only desperation. His knuckles trembled as he knocked. The door creaked open. She stood barefoot on the wooden floor, framed by soft light. Her eyes, gray like a frozen lake, fell instantly to the child in his arms. She said nothing at first, just stared, blinking slowly, as if measuring the weight of the moment. I need milk, Jason stammered. Please, she hasn't eaten since morning. I don't have anyone. Still, she didn't speak, but her hand lifted gently and motioned for him to step inside. The house smelled faintly of lavender and dust, old but clean. Books lined every wall. A fire crackled in the corner, casting shadows that danced across faded wallpaper. She disappeared through a door and returned moments later, not with a bottle, but with a linen cloth across her shoulder. She took the baby from Jason without hesitation. Then, with a grace so quiet it bordered on ritual, she unbuttoned the front of her robe and fed the child herself. Jason watched, stunned. I didn't expect, he began, but she raised one hand, silencing him. The baby quieted, instantly small fists unclenching, lips latching with relief. Jason swallowed hard. The room felt warmer now, but he was cold inside, shivering from something deeper than rain. You live alone? He asked. No answer. She shifted her weight in the chair, rocking slightly as she cradled the baby. A long scratch ran across her forearm, fresh, red. Jason noticed the pale ring of skin where a wedding band once was. I'm Jason, he offered, voice softer now. This is Ava. She nodded, still not speaking. Her gaze was on the child. He looked around. Old photos were turned face down on a nearby shelf. A piano sat closed, sheet music curled with age. On the far wall, a painting of a lake at dusk, its water black, moonlight fractured. After a few minutes, the baby sighed, full. The woman stood, moved into the kitchen, and returned with a warm blanket. She handed it to Jason, but said nothing. Her expression hadn't changed. She wasn't angry. She wasn't afraid. She was watching. Thank you, Jason whispered, unsure if he should stay or leave. I don't know what I would have done. She reached out, touched his hand briefly, then stepped away. In that moment, Jason realized something that chilled him deeper than the storm outside. She had seen him before. Not tonight, not here, but somewhere, somehow. She had known his name before he spoke it. And yet she said nothing, just watched the baby sleep and closed the door behind her. Morning mist hugged the valley like a secret. Jason woke to the soft murmur of birds and the faint scent of coffee. Ava stirred beside him, swaddled in warmth and silence. The guest room was simple, almost monastic. White sheets, a sturdy crib that hadn't been used in years, and a single painting of a burning tree. Jason rubbed his eyes, unsure if the night before had truly happened or was some surreal fever dream fueled by fear and exhaustion. Downstairs, Eleanor Vale stood at the stove, stirring oatmeal. Her silver hair was tied in a low knot, and she wore a gray cardigan over a pressed blouse. She looked ordinary, peaceful even, but her stillness was misleading. Behind her calm, something coiled. Jason thanked her. She nodded again, wordlessly, and gestured toward the baby seat already prepared at the table. You didn't have to do all this, he said. Still no reply. She placed the oatmeal in front of him, then stepped out through a side door. Jason sat in awkward quiet, spoon in hand, the weight of her silence louder than any conversation he'd ever had. He didn't know it yet, but every room in the house had eyes. Up in the attic, past shelves of sealed boxes and broken clocks, an array of old but functional surveillance screens flickered softly. One showed the kitchen, another the guest room, a third the hallway Jason had passed through last night. where his muddy shoes had left a trace. Eleanor's fingers adjusted the dials, steady and practiced. She hadn't had guests in 3 years. Not since Richard's funeral. They still called her the widow on the hill, though most had forgotten the real woman behind the name. Some thought she'd lost her mind. Others believed she simply grieved too hard. No one imagined she'd once held voting power on the board of a multinational energy empire, that she'd helped shape mergers worth billions before disappearing. Without a headline, Eleanor had been many things: a daughter, a negotiator, a wife. Now she was a shadow, one who watched everything. Down in town, whispers had started. A stranger at the Vale house. A baby's cry echoing across the fields. At the general store, Mrs. Langdon leaned in and murmured to the clerk. She never liked children, that one. Can't believe she let a man with a baby inside. She lost hers, didn't she? Decao, clerk replied. Back when the accident happened? No, Mrs. Langdon said, narrowing her eyes. That wasn't her baby. Back at the farmhouse, Jason stood in the hallway holding Ava in his arms. He paused beneath a portrait of a man, in a dark navy suit, strong jaw, intense eyes. The brass plaque beneath read Richard Vale, 1961-2019. A fresh rose rested in the vase beside it. He was your husband, Jason said aloud, glancing toward the kitchen. Eleanor had returned, her eyes locking with his. He felt it then, like a thread pulled too tight. Not fear, not suspicion, surveillance. Her gaze wasn't warm. It wasn't cold either. It was clinical. Thank you again, he said, cradling Ava closer. She finally spoke, low and clipped. Rooms are safe. You can rest. Then she turned away, footsteps light on hardwood, disappearing up the stairs like smoke. Jason exhaled, uneasy. He didn't know it yet, but the woman who'd fed his child hadn't slept in weeks. Not since she received the first letter. Not since the past began to scratch its way back in, and certainly not since she saw his face. Jason sat at the kitchen table, hands wrapped around a chipped mug. The coffee was too strong, the silence even stronger. Ava napped in the crib beside him, her tiny chest rising and falling in rhythm with the old grandfather clock across the room. Eleanor stood by the sink, wiping already clean dishes. She hadn't spoken since breakfast. I wasn't always like this, Jason said suddenly. She turned slightly, head tilted. Not curious, just aware. He took a breath. I had a house once, a real job. I was a foreman at a construction site. My wife, Maya, she used to make fun of the way I folded laundry, said I rolled it like blueprints. Eleanor's hand paused mid-dry. Jason's voice cracked, then steadied. I started drinking after the layoffs. Said it was just for the nerves. Then it was for sleep. Then it was to stop shaking. Maya left when she was 6 months pregnant. Said she'd rather raise a baby alone than with a bottle. He looked at Eleanor, expecting something, judgment maybe. But she said nothing, just returned to the dishes, water running too long. Jason chuckled bitterly. Been clean 14 months now. Meetings every week. Ava. She's all I got left. A moment passed. Then Eleanor said quietly, She was born in winter, wasn't she? Jason's stomach tightened. Yeah, February. You named her Ava Grace after your grandmother. He froze. His hand slipped from the mug, nearly knocking it over. I never told you that. Eleanor didn't turn. The room shifted. Jason stood slowly, his breath shallow. How do you know my daughter's full name? Eleanor placed the towel, down with precision. You talk in your sleep and people leave traces. That's not something I'd say out loud. Now she turned. Calm. Measured. You left a hospital band in your coat pocket. The name was still visible. Jason didn't remember doing that. He sat back down, trying to calm the rising heat in his chest. You're a very observant woman, he said. I have to be. Her eyes held his for a beat too long. The kind of stare you'd expect from a chess player, not a hostess. Jason reached for his mug again, hand trembling slightly. Look, I know how this sounds, but I'm not dangerous. I just needed help. I know, she said softly. That's why you're still here." The words sounded comforting, but they weren't. Not entirely. He noticed something then. Faint scratches along the edge of the table, like claw marks or restless fingers digging in. His fingers grazed them. Eleanor returned to the counter, hands clasped. Jason tried again. "Maya hasn't called. I think maybe she meant to disappear. I don't even know if she's alive." Eleanor said nothing. The wind outside picked up, tapping branches against the glass. A storm was coming, Jason thought. But maybe it had already begun. He looked back at his daughter, then at Eleanor. "Why are you helping us?" he asked. Eleanor gave the smallest smile. "Because someone once helped me when I didn't deserve it." Then she turned and walked out of the room, her footsteps slow but steady, like she'd rehearsed everyone. Jason sat there, colder than before, because deep down he knew this wasn't just kindness. It was something else. Something watching. Waiting. The house was too quiet. Jason stood in the hallway watching Eleanor's car roll down the gravel road through the front window. She had mentioned something about checking on a neighbor's fence, just an errand. "I won't be long," she'd said, slipping on a light coat. He waited until the sound of her tires faded into nothing. Then he moved. The farmhouse creaked. As he walked, Ava was asleep again, her tiny form bundled safely in the guest room. Jason walked past the sitting room, past the kitchen, to the narrow hallway he hadn't noticed before. At the end of it, a locked door with chipped white paint. He tried the knob. It didn't budge. He should have walked away. Instead, he fetched a butter knife from the kitchen drawer. The lock gave after 2 tries. Inside, the air was still, dry, untouched, like the room had been sealed in time. No dust, just silence, and photographs, hundreds of them. They covered every wall, neatly arranged, black and white in color, some old, some recent. Children, all children. Infants, toddlers, teens. Some smiled, others didn't. Many wore hospital bracelets or mismatched clothes. A few had dark circles under their eyes. Jason stepped deeper into the room, his throat dry. He didn't know what he was looking for. Maybe a pattern, maybe a sign this wasn't what it looked like. A clipboard rested on the desk beneath the wall. It held a list, names, dates, initials, short phrases scribbled beside them. Ruth, age 8, scars healing. Kevin, withdrawn, won't speak. Maya J., refused shelter, disappeared next week. Jason's heart stopped at the name, Maya. He yanked the clipboard closer. Below the entry, a small photo, paper-clipped. It was her, his Maya, hair thinner than he remembered. Eyes hollow, taken somewhere Jason didn't recognize. His hands began to shake. He turned around, eyes darting from face to face. Were these kids in danger? Had Eleanor done something to them? Why photograph so many? He spotted a filing cabinet, in the corner, unlocked. Inside, folders labeled foster reports, survivor statements, unfiled leads. He opened one. Inside were photocopies of legal documents, letters, even restraining orders against known abusers. It hit him slowly. This wasn't a trophy room. It was a record, a rescue map. Jason staggered backward, suddenly ashamed of the suspicion that had gripped him. These weren't victims of Eleanor. They were protected by her, documented, watched over. But how did she know Maya? He looked again at the photo. This time he noticed the faint date in the corner, 3 years ago, just before Maya vanished. Jason's hand went to his face. His mind raced. Did Maya come here for help and turn away? Or was she turned away? He didn't hear the footsteps behind him. Not at first. Some rooms, Eleanor said softly, aren't meant to be unlocked. Jason spun around. Eleanor stood in the doorway, not angry, just disappointed. "I thought you were checking on the fence," he stammered. "I was, but I forgot something. I came back." Jason stepped away from the desk. "I saw Maya's name." That picture, what happened to her? Eleanor studied him. I tried to help her. She didn't stay. A pause. She was too scared of someone. I didn't know it was you. Jason's breath caught. It wasn't, I swear I never laid a hand on her. Eleanor said nothing, just slowly closed the door behind her. The latch clicked. She turned the key, from the inside. The crying had stopped. Not just quieted, stopped. Ever since Eleanor held Ava in her arms, the baby's fussiness had vanished. No colic, no gasping sobs, no sleepless nights. Jason had noticed it first the morning after they arrived, then again the next day. By the third morning he could no longer ignore it. He watched now from the kitchen as Eleanor cradled Ava near the old farmhouse window, softly humming a melody Jason didn't recognize. Sunlight brushed across both of them, and Ava, his restless, always startled infant, cooed, nestled deeply into Eleanor's shoulder like she had been there forever. It was beautiful. It was terrifying. What kind of stranger made a baby feel safer than her own father? Jason cleared his throat. What kind of formula are you using? Eleanor turned, her smile calm. Nothing special, just milk. He frowned. From where? She walked past him, brushing his arm lightly with her sleeve. A mother always knows what a child needs, she said before disappearing down the narrow stairs leading to the basement. Jason hesitated, then followed. The basement was cool, too sterile for an old farmhouse. The floor had been freshly poured, walls painted white. Cabinets lined the far side. A humming mini-fridge sat beneath a long counter. Above it, glass shelves, neatly arranged with small labeled vials. Most were opaque. Some had faint red or milky content. Each bore dates, names, initials. Others just numbers. Jason's stomach turned. He stepped closer. On the counter sat a centrifuge, a box of sterile gloves, and a sealed bag marked "Live Samples, handle with care." His hands trembled as he opened the fridge. Inside, more vials, carefully arranged. One with the label Ava H7WKs, his breath caught. Another, Jason H unverified, and another, EMV matched. He stumbled backward. "Why do you have my baby's DNA?" he whispered. Behind him, the stairs creaked. Eleanor stepped down slowly, barefoot again, her eyes soft as ever. "It's not what you think." "Then what is it?" Jason's voice cracked. "I've worked in biogenetics for over 20 years, she said calmly. I used to fund labs that helped trafficked children find their true lineage. Some weren't stolen, some were bred. I wanted to help." Jason stared at her. "Bred?" She nodded. "Some children are born into lies, like mine was." He didn't know what she meant, but then her eyes flicked to the top shelf, to a sealed wooden box. On it, a carved nameplate. Mara Vale, Eleanor's daughter. A silence stretched between them. Jason swallowed. "And the milk?" Eleanor looked toward the sink. A glass bottle sat there, half full. The contents were creamy, thick, not synthetic. "Still produce," she said softly. "The body remembers even after grief." Jason turned pale. "You're feeding my baby. Your milk?" Eleanor stepped forward. "She's calm, isn't she?" Jason couldn't argue, but he stepped away, and this time he didn't thank her. He just went upstairs, locked the door behind him, and held Ava close, wondering what kind of miracle or monster had taken them in, and which side of that Eleanor Vale truly lived on. Jason didn't sleep that night. He watched Ava's tiny chest rise and fall with every breath, her lips still faintly wet from the milk that wasn't his, in a house that wasn't home, beside a woman who wasn't family. By dawn, his hand was already on the basement door. Eleanor was there, waiting. She stood in the same lab coat from the night before, clean, unwrinkled, like she'd never gone to bed. A steaming mug of tea sat beside her untouched. "You lied," Jason said. "No," she replied. "You just didn't ask the right questions." He stepped forward. "You had my daughter's DNA before I told you her name. You fed her your milk. You knew about my ex-wife. You knew everything. How? Eleanor finally looked him in the eyes. Because I spent my life tracking men like you. Jason's nostrils flared. Excuse me? She didn't flinch. I ran a medical nonprofit, she said. We worked with underfunded clinics, mostly women's shelters, pediatric wards, and unlicensed birthing centers. Places no one thinks to look. We used coded data, breast milk donations, and blood samples to link victims to abusers. Silently. Safely. Jason stared at her like she was speaking another language. You collected data on mothers, he asked. That's surveillance. It was protection, Eleanor said sharply. We saved children who would have ended up dead. Jason's fists clenched. So what? You think I'm one of them? Eleanor held up a single sheet of paper from a nearby drawer, a folded medical file, his name typed in the top corner. He grabbed it, flipped it open, and froze. Date of complaint, February 14th, 20XX, filed by Samantha Howard. Allegation, intimidation, substance use, emotional distress during pregnancy. Jason's mouth went dry. She never told me. She didn't need to, Eleanor said. She told us. That was enough. His voice dropped to a whisper. I never hit her. But you hurt her, Eleanor replied, and by the time you realized it, she was gone. He let the paper fall from his hands. That's why you helped us? No, she said. I helped Ava. Her words struck him harder than any accusation could. Jason's face twisted. Guilt, rage, confusion. You think I'm a monster, he muttered. I think you're a man at the edge, Eleanor replied. The kind who begs for milk in the dark and leaves teeth marks on second chances. Jason took a step back. You watched me, he said. You judged me. From day one. No, Eleanor said quietly. I remembered you. Jason blinked. What? She came here once. Your ex. 3 years ago. Late at night, same rain, same desperation. She was pregnant. I gave her shelter. She never said your name, but when you showed up last week, same voice, same broken eyes. I knew. Jason's chest heaved. He looked toward the stairs. Take the baby, Eleanor said gently, or leave her with me. But decide now. Because next time, I won't open the door. He didn't reply. He turned, climbed the stairs, stopped halfway, then came back down, tears in his eyes, and laid the baby in Eleanor's arms. I need a minute, he whispered. She nodded. He walked outside into the cold, not to run, but to breathe. Jason stepped out into the morning light, wind brushing cold against his sweat-damp neck. He wasn't sure where he was walking, just away from her. Away from that woman with her quiet power and unsettling truths. But he didn't get far. The crunch of gravel under boots stopped him. 2 men approached from the side path near the orchard. One older, wiry, with silver in his beard, and the other, maybe Jason's age, tall, scarred, with a limp. Neither looked threatening, but neither looked like they'd let him pass. Jason stiffened. Who are you? The older man extended a calloused hand. Wes. The younger offered a nod. Cal. Jason ignored both. I'm taking my kid, he said. Wes raised an eyebrow. You sure that's what she needs? Jason stepped forward. Who the hell are you to ask? Cal reached out and tapped his own chest. We were you. Once. Jason narrowed his eyes. Wes gestured toward a small cottage near the trees. We live here, Eleanor's guest house, been here 6 months. Jason laughed bitterly. You hiding out? No, Wes said softly. We're learning how not to ruin people. Jason scoffed. You sound like a damn cult. She ever raise her voice? Cal asked suddenly. Jason blinked. What? Eleanor, Cal clarified. Ever screamed, threatened, locked doors? Jason shook his head. She doesn't need to, Wes said. That's what makes it worse. She sees you, Not just who you are, but who you've been. And she doesn't flinch. Jason's mouth tightened. She thinks she's some savior. No, Cal replied. She thinks she's tired of watching children pay for grown men's mistakes. Jason turned toward the house. This is insane. Maybe, Wes said, stepping aside. But before you go, just ask yourself something. Jason paused. What does your daughter actually need? Wes asked. Your pride or her peace? Jason clenched his jaw and kept walking, fast, but their words clung to him like burrs. Back inside, Eleanor sat in the kitchen, feeding Ava from a small glass bottle. She didn't look up. I'm not staying, Jason said. She nodded. I'm not. One of your lost men, he added. Still, no reply. Jason approached slowly. Why them? Why keep them around? Eleanor finally met his eyes. Because prison teaches fear, she said, but not change. Here, they learn to face what they did, every day. Jason frowned. You're not a judge. I'm not, she agreed. But someone has to be a witness. Ava cooed quietly. Jason watched her, so calm in Eleanor's arms, so safe. I don't want her to grow up afraid of me, he said. Eleanor stood, placed the baby in his arms. She won't, she whispered. If you give her reasons not to be. Jason held his daughter tightly, for the first time, not as a shield for himself, but as something whole, something breakable. He didn't speak again. He just nodded. And when Wes and Cal saw him that evening, Jason wasn't packing to leave. He was moving into the guest house. Jason couldn't sleep, even with Ava curled safely beside him in the crib. Eleanor had provided, even with the soft hum of wind through the old farmhouse windows, something gnawed at him. A pull. A whisper from the past, getting louder with every breath. He wandered the guest house after midnight. The air felt denser here, full of unspoken stories. In the back closet, under a box of worn blankets and yellowed books, he found a faded shoebox, labeled in shaky handwriting for him if he ever asks. He hesitated, then opened it. Inside, a cassette tape. No note. No label. Just the weight of plastic and mystery. He dusted off the old player nearby, shoved the tape in, and pressed play. The hiss of static. Then her voice. Jason. His knees nearly buckled. It was her. Lacey. His ex-wife. The voice was softer than he remembered, cracked slightly at the edges. If something happens to me, she continued, don't believe it was an accident. Look for Eleanor Vale. She knew before I did. Jason pressed pause. His pulse roared in his ears. A cold sweat broke across his neck. What did she mean? Before I did? He pressed play again. I didn't want to believe it either. That you were using again. That maybe you didn't even know what you were capable of when you were high. But the bruises didn't lie, the fear didn't lie. Jason froze, his mind reeled. No, he hadn't hit her, had he? I forgive you, she whispered. I still do, but I couldn't stay. I had to protect her. Static filled the last few seconds, then silence. Jason stared at the tape recorder, trembling. She hadn't just left him. She had warned him. Even in fear, she left breadcrumbs. He stumbled outside into the moonlight, the tape clutched in his fist like a live wire. The orchard swayed gently. Somewhere in the main house, lights glowed. He thought of Ava, of the way she clung to Eleanor's voice, of the way Eleanor had known Lacey's name without ever asking, of the locked room with the photographs, the hidden lab, the files. It was never random. He was brought here, but not out of cruelty, out of design, out of justice. Jason sank to his knees, not in rage, but in clarity. He had been set up, but he deserved it. When morning came, he didn't ask Eleanor about the tape. He didn't need to. She greeted him on the porch with a nod, holding a mug of tea and the baby monitor. Ava's soft breathing filled the speaker. You listened, Eleanor said simply. Jason met her eyes. And you knew, he replied. I did, she said, but truth is only useful when you're ready to carry it. Jason looked at the guest house, then at the orchard beyond. I'm ready. Eleanor nodded once. No praise, no forgiveness, just acceptance. And it was enough. Jason sat at Eleanor's long kitchen table, the scent of chamomile lingering in the air. A heavy leather-bound book lay between them. Its spine was cracked, the pages stained with time. She opened it. Inside were columns, names, dates, codes. Some marked with red dots, others with handwritten notes. One column read, Incident Report. Another, Custody Outcome, the last reformation status. Jason's eyes scanned the names. He recognized none, until he reached the middle of the page. Lacey Monroe, Ava Monroe, domestic instability, narcotic relapse suspicion, custody, reassigned, temporary. His hands curled into fists. So what, you were the judge now? Eleanor didn't flinch. I wasn't the judge, I was the recorder, the witness, the only one who saw what the courts missed. He flipped another page. Marco Linwood, infant son, reformed. Robert H., twin girls, surrendered. Ben Casey, boy, age 3, fled. What does that mean? Surrendered. She looked at him, her voice even. Some gave up parental rights willingly. Others disappeared. One. Her gaze drifted toward the orchard. Tried to take the child by force. He lives in the facility now, with supervision. Jason's throat tightened. And you just kept all of them? What gives you the right? Eleanor tilted her head. The same thing that gave the courts the right to fail those mothers. I simply did what they wouldn't. I protected the children. Jason stood abruptly, shoving the ledger closed. I want my daughter. Tonight. I'll call the police if I have to. You can, she said, calmly sipping her tea. But when they come, I'll show them this. She tapped the book. Your record. The photos from Lacey's medical file. The complaint she filed before she vanished. The testimony she left behind. Jason's breath came faster. I never hurt her. Then prove it, Eleanor said. Not to me. To yourself. To Ava. He hesitated. She stood and walked to a cabinet. From it, she retrieved a slim file folder. This is what your ex-wife saw before she filed the complaint, she said. A breakdown of patterns, behavior logs, court transcripts I pulled from public records. You don't remember hurting her, but she did. Jason's face went pale as he opened the folder. There, in full color, was a photo, Lacey with a bruise, under her left eye, dated 2 weeks before he vanished. Another showed a shattered baby monitor beside a wall with hairline cracks. A child-proof gate torn off its hinges. He stepped back. I was drunk, he whispered. I didn't know. I thought she fell. Eleanor walked closer, voice quiet but unwavering. You thought wrong. Now you have 2 paths. He looked at her. Path 1. You take me to court. Spend the next year arguing your way into supervised visitation if the system still trusts you. Or you stay, here, under conditions. You learn who you were, who you still are. You prove change with actions, not tears. Jason looked back at the ledger, dozens of men before him, some broken, some healed, some gone. He swallowed hard. And if I fail? Eleanor looked at Ava, now asleep in her bassinet, a soft coo escaping her lips. Then she never remembers you. The silence stretched between them, and then Jason sat down. I'll start tonight. Eleanor opened the ledger once more and added his name. The porch creaked beneath Eleanor's bare feet as she opened the door to the morning fog. The air was cold, almost metallic, as if it had something to say, but couldn't form the words. There, it sat carefully placed in the center of the worn doormat, a baby bottle. Filled to the top. Warm. She knelt slowly, cradling it in her hands like something sacred. the kind of object that could mean nothing or everything. Her fingers trembled as she unscrewed the cap just slightly. The faintest scent of real milk, not formula, rose to her nose. Jason had left. No note, no goodbye, just this. She turned the bottle in her hands. His initials were etched lightly on the rim in black marker. J.H. He'd cleaned it, sterilized it, prepared it, and returned it full. It wasn't about the milk. It was about what it meant. A man who once came begging had given back, without being asked, without needing applause, without demanding his daughter in return. A quiet offering, a quiet apology. Inside, Ava stirred in her crib. Eleanor could hear the soft rustle of baby limbs and a sigh that melted into silence. She stood there on the porch for a long time, the bottle pressed against her heart. Tears slid down her cheeks, slow and unexpected. Not for Jason, not entirely, but for the dozens of other bottles that had never come back. The men who had walked away angry, or entitled, or broken beyond recognition. The ones who had fled the house in storms and threats, swearing she was wrong, twisted, dangerous. She had names, ledgers, surveillance, but not all of them healed. Not all of them even tried. She stepped back into the house, placed the bottle on the table, and wrote a single date in the ledger beside Jason's name. Returned milk. Unprompted. 6:43 a.m. Then below it, status. Beginning. There were no guarantees. She knew that. Redemption didn't come with ceremony. It came in moments, tiny, unnoticed, uncomfortable. But sometimes, they added up. Her eyes drifted to the photo wall. So many children, so many names, so many unfinished stories. She touched the glass over Ava's photo. Beside it, Jason's name, not as father, not yet, but as someone trying. Outside, the fog rolled across the hills like a soft blanket. Somewhere, Eleanor knew, another man was walking through it, another child crying in a too small blanket. Another woman hoping someone would hear her before it was too late. The farmhouse creaked again. Another knock. She turned. No one, just the wind. She closed the door gently, locked it, not out of fear but out of rhythm. Downstairs in the lab, she added a fresh label to the refrigerator's shelf. J.H. Cleared. Then she closed it, turned, off the light and walked upstairs. Ava was awake now, reaching, smiling. Eleanor scooped her into her arms and whispered into her hair. You won't remember the bottle, but maybe one day you'll feel what it meant. Outside, the bottle remained on the porch for hours, catching morning light, until it was gone. Just like him, but not like before. The courtroom was quiet, so quiet the hum of the fluorescent lights seemed louder than breath. No jury, just a judge, a clerk, 2 attorneys, and a table where Eleanor Vale sat alone, her hands folded, steady, as if holding time itself between her fingers. Jason sat opposite her. He looked nothing like the man who had once come banging on her door at midnight. His beard was trimmed, suit slightly wrinkled, but he was clean, composed. A single photo rested on the table before him, his daughter's, taken just days ago, her eyes wide and curious. It wasn't a trial in the traditional sense, no cameras, no press, just a family court hearing, sealed, confidential. But to Eleanor it was the trial Ava's mother never got. She rose when called, her gait slow but purposeful. She took the stand, not with anger, but with reverence. The judge asked her name, and she gave it. Eleanor Vale, advocate, guardian, witness. She was sworn in. Then she reached into her leather bag and withdrew a folded sheet of paper, yellowed at the edges, creased with grief. I've been asked to read this on behalf of Ava's biological mother, Celeste Harmon, deceased March 14th of last year, Eleanor began. Jason didn't blink. Her voice was steady but low, intimate, as if Celeste were there in the room. To whomever reads this, if you're hearing my words, I am gone. And the man sitting in this room once shared my home, my hopes and my fears. He also shared my pain. I don't know what version of Jason you're seeing now. Maybe he's changed, maybe he hasn't, but I ask, don't let him charm you. Let him show you. In full, my daughter deserves safety before sentiment. If Jason has truly become the man he never was, I give my permission for him to try to earn her, not just claim her, but not as her father, not yet as her student. Eleanor paused. No sound, not even a sniffle. Jason stared at the table. He must learn what it means to raise a life you could once barely carry. Only then will I rest easy. Eleanor folded the letter slowly and set it on the judge's bench. She wrote this 6 months before her death, she added, when she first feared she wouldn't survive childbirth. Jason finally looked up. I didn't know, he said, softly. You didn't ask, Eleanor replied. Silence again. The judge cleared his throat. We'll take a brief recess to deliberate. Ms. Vale, Mr. Harper, please remain seated. Eleanor returned to her chair. Jason didn't move. She glanced at him, not with hatred, not even with pity, but with the measured calm of someone who had seen cycles repeat too many times. I want to be better, he said, breaking the silence. For her. Then let her be your mirror, Eleanor replied. Not your prize. A soft knock at the courtroom door signaled the return of the court clerk. The judge stepped back into his seat. Decision time. But Eleanor already knew the outcome. Because justice wasn't a verdict today, it was a voice Celeste's finally heard. The sun had set over the hilltop, the sky fading from lavender to charcoal. Crickets hummed low. A warm breeze carried the scent of summer hay as it moved through the worn shutters of Eleanor's farmhouse. She sat in the rocking chair just beyond the porch, cradling Ava in her arms, the baby's soft coos rising and falling with the rhythm of the wood beneath her. A single oil lamp glowed beside them, its flame flickering like a heartbeat, quiet, uncelebrated but steady. No cameras, no headlines, no parade for the woman who had fed a child not her own. Only moonlight bore witness to the act. Inside the Fiancée house, the room stood still, save for the gentle ticking of the old grandfather clock. The guest room, Jason's old sanctuary, was empty now. Sheets folded, a small note left behind. I don't know if I deserve her, but I'll try to be the kind of man who someday might, Jay. Eleanor hadn't cried when she read it, not because she didn't feel, but because the tears had long since carved themselves into memory, lines etched not on her face, but in her choices. She had once been Eleanor Vale, chairwoman of one of the country's largest biotech firms. Her name had graced conference halls, stock tickers, and business magazines, but power never softened her. It sharpened her into someone who could see clearly what others chose to look away from. Neglect. Lies. Systems built to protect men like Jason. So when the board forced her out, too emotional, too outspoken, they thought they had silenced her, but Eleanor didn't stop watching, didn't stop listening. And when Celeste Harmon knocked on her door 2 years ago, frightened, clutching her belly, asking for safety, Eleanor didn't hesitate. She gave her a room, a name to put on hospital forms. And when the worst came and the woman never woke again, she gave her daughter a home, not forever. Just until the right man became real. That was her miracle. Not divine intervention, not vengeance. Just one truth fed at a time in silence until it bloomed. Footsteps approached the porch. Slow, thoughtful. Jason. He stepped onto the creaking planks. His shoulders relaxed, not in arrogance but humility. His eyes settled on the child in Eleanor's arms. He didn't reach for her. He didn't speak. He simply knelt. I can't erase what I was, he said after a moment, voice raw. But I want her to remember what I became. Eleanor studied him. The porch light painted half his face in shadow, the other in warmth. She will, she replied. If you feed her what's real. No more lies. No more silence. Jason nodded. I left milk in the truck. For the others. A pause. Then, a soft smile from Eleanor. I know. He stood, lingered, then turned toward the gravel road that led away from the farmhouse. No goodbye. No dramatic last glance. Just understanding. And that was enough. As his car disappeared down the path, Eleanor looked down at Ava's sleeping face. A breeze stirred her curls. The baby sighed, as if some old grief had exhaled. "You'll never have to ask for leftovers," Eleanor whispered into her ear. "Not in this house." She rocked forward once more. The stars above blinked quietly. She wasn't a savior, wasn't a legend, just a woman who fed a child. And sometimes, that was more powerful than miracles.